Soviet Strategy for Nuclear War by Joseph D. Douglas Jr. and Amoretta M. Hoeber. This is a book I found, I think, at one of the local used bookstores. This is originally published in 1979. And as the title states, it is a study of the known strategies of the Soviet strategies for nuclear warfare. And I'm going to keep this fairly brief, but obviously with all the things happening overseas right now, I dug this out to see if it had any clues as to things we might want to look for. And I thought this was interesting in Chapter 2, The Soviet View of Nuclear War Fighting. And I'm just going to read this first section here. War is simply the continuation of politics by other, i.e. violent, means. Emphasis in original. This is a primary thesis of Soviet ideology and military thought. Nuclear war, even world nuclear war, is no exception. The Soviets emphasize that one important dimension of U.S. thinking, namely that nuclear war is the end rather than the continuation of politics, is invalid. This does not mean that nuclear war has ceased to be an instrument of politics, as is claimed by the overwhelming majority of representatives of pacifist, anti-war movements in the bourgeois world. This is a subjective judgment. It expresses merely protest against nuclear war. Although war is a continuation of politics, with the onset of war, a distinct change occurs. During war, military doctrine, which is the Soviet equivalent of U.S. national security policy, withdraws somewhat to the background. War is to be guided primarily by military, political, and military strategic considerations. War and armed conflict are guided not by doctrine, but by strategy. Thus, preparation for war, especially world nuclear war, is the principal mission of Soviet strategy. And I'll stop there. And I found that interesting just because it's a lot of what we're seeing right now in Ukraine, where obviously a lot of Soviet media has been, Russian media, former Soviet, Russian media has obviously been censored here in the West. So I used to go to Russia Today to kind of get their angle of things, but alas, I cannot now. But even so, even on Russia Today, even before they were removed from YouTube, their coverage was very strange. And I say very strange in the sense ours is very sensational and really points up that our side's winning, we're awesome, here's how the other guys are stupid and incompetent. And you see a lot of that right now, and you hear very little on the other side. Now, again, a lot of that is because the other side is censored and we don't hear what's going on. But even through international channels, you really don't hear much out of that side. And that is, I think, because of that doctrine of kind of retreating back to a position of we're fighting a war, we're not fighting a public relations war. And as the unfortunate side effect to that is, I think a lot of people in the United States have this very mistaken idea that this is a winnable conflict, that we could walk in there, walk a mud, this would be a walk in a park to go directly up against the Russian military. And maybe it is. I don't know. I don't know enough about the current state of the Russian military to be able to say one way or the other. But I do find it a little unsettling that I think that's kind of how the war is being sold to the U.S. public. Because the Russian philosophy is to back off and really just focus on the military, the strategic element of this, that we really don't hear much from that side, aside from just very few reactions. Whereas on our side, we're hearing these over the top, we're kicking butt, taking names, that sort of thing. And I think part of that is with the intent to sell the general public on the idea that this is a winnable conflict, that if you send your kids off to if NATO gets directly involved and we actually get in a direct shooting war with Russia, that it's no big deal. And that's something that's really struck me in the last few days of coverage. There seems to be a deliberate effort to sell that to the public, to say that a war with Russia proper wouldn't really be that big of a deal. And that is a terrifying proposition for anyone who has watched this stuff unfold for the last 40 some years. That's the idea that that you would just waltz right into a world war casually like that is terrifying, to say the least. So anyway, I'm going to read this some more, and I read this a few years ago when I first got it, but it's definitely time to dig this out again and see how much of this holds true for the current situation. Again, there's a lot of talk right now of Russia being this paper tiger, and a lot of this being just a lot of their capabilities being just bluster. And now we're finding out that the Russian military is not near as powerful as people thought it was. And haha, funny for them. Look at how we're kicking butt in there. But I think a lot of that really should be watched very closely and seen for what it is. And that is a sales pitch to us, the general public, to say, see, it's not so bad. The water's fine. Come on in and send your kids off to war and it'll be okay. You'll definitely win. And I think that is an incredibly naive and incredibly foolish stance to take. So anyway, Soviet strategy for nuclear war. Any of you who have any books like this, I'd be curious if anyone has any recommended reading on this subject, because like I said, right now, unfortunately, very timely. I'm curious what everybody else has to say about that. Personally, watching some of the coverage, I was trained as a Bradley vehicle mechanic, a track vehicle mechanic. So, and I got to work with some of the Soviet era BMPs out at Fort Irwin many moons ago. So when I was in that situation, we had some explanation of Soviet tactics back then, but I've been out of that world for a long time, so I don't know kind of what the state of the art is on that. But it is kind of sad to see some of those BMPs getting blown up on the field. I don't like seeing anyone, any life being lost in the circumstances. Is sad. I don't take any pleasure in watching any human beings die in any way. So I just want to put that out up front. I don't think watching Russian tanks get blown up with the men inside doesn't make me happy. Watching Ukrainian stuff get blown up with those guys inside doesn't make me happy either. So anyway, curious if anybody has any thoughts on this. If anyone has done any other studying or has any recommended reading, I would definitely be down for it. It is definitely the time to brush up on your Russian military history right about now.